I'm one of the moderators for BJ's group, and it was really interesting because he posted a question the other day that got some folks riled up, and I was totally on board with this. I was like, we need to talk about this, from a social sciences perspective, because I am a social scientist, being, a social studies teacher for decades. And you're an economist, and BJ is in the community and he does like 900 different things too. So I thought it would be fun to have that conversation, see what other people were thinking about, out there in the world. So, BJ, would you like to tell us what it was you posted? And
Yeah,
let's talk.
so no, thanks, Sherry. I really appreciate that. And so yeah, the Cara Black owned and operated business Facebook group has like nearly 35,000 people looking to find and buy from Black owned businesses here in the state of Colorado. And me just having that engagement and that audience that I have, I posted a message or a comment rather, just saying that as Black people, we need to start dating, courting, getting engaged, and then marrying before we have sex. And the thought behind that, which then brought up a whole bunch of different comments along that thread, was that the Black family is the core of all that we have, right? I mean, you can go back to how they, basically separated us through slavery and sold off kids, and we're doing all these different things from when our ancestors were working those fields. But if we have a unified Black family, there's so many possibilities for us from not just a social construct, but then also going financially. I mean, for one, the Black family together, the Black family unit, you have mother, you have father, and then you have one, two, however many kids that they're going to have, but you have them together. And especially in today's age, we have to have two incomes to survive. Like that's just the way
Mhm,
it is now.
mhm,
And so if you have a mother and a father who are working, now they can provide for their kids. And then those kids can see both mother and father living together, hopefully working through different challenges that they're going to have, whether it's financial, social, emotional, all those different things raising them, but they're going to see that they're going to benefit from being raised in that household versus what we saw in Tyler Perry's new movie Straw, where, you have this mom who had all these different things going on around her and no man to help her, no family to help her. She's working two jobs, trying to take care of this little girl. And then the little girl, spoiler alert, sorry guys, she actually winds up dying in the movie. But like we want to stop that from happening. And so behind that was women actually control the level of man that they're going to receive by closing their legs and raising the standard of what they want so that they can get a man who will then date them, court them, get engaged with them, marry them before having sex. But right now, they're giving away the milk for free. No one's going to buy the cow. And so
mhm,
from that standpoint, it's like, okay, we need to go ahead and talk to our young Black women, these young girls, and say, listen, you need to stop just giving it up. Set some standards in your life because as you date, you can find out about a person. You're gonna find out, and especially, I'm not saying date a week, 2 months, 3 months, date a while so that you can see that person in their good times, in their bad times, how they react. Talk to them about their family planning down the road for themselves. What are their ambitions? What are their goals? What are their financial aspirations that they want to have for themselves? What do they want to have in a mate when they do get married? How do they even think about marriage? Is that even something that's on their mind, or are they just out there trying to stick their thing in anything that lets them, right? And so, as ladies have a standard and they set the standard, men then, especially Black men, will then elevate to that because we're only going to go after what we can get. And if it's easy, which it's been easy, and the mainstream media is continuing to push out the narrative that it's easy, just give it up, live your life, have fun, test drive the car. And so men are like, okay, cool. And ladies are like, yep, here, you can have it. And then they wind up getting pregnant. They have, you could potentially get STDs out there. But then if you do get pregnant, now it's this person that you've met for maybe two, three times out of your life. You don't like them. You find out, oh, they don't really want this kid. So you're going to be stuck with them. And now you have to raise them. And you're dealing with all these different things. And the fallout from that, from now you're a single mom, you got at least one kid, potentially because you haven't raised your standard. You might have other baby daddies down the road, and then they're still not coming around. Now you got multiple kids, multiple baby daddies, and you're struggling. You're on food stamps or you're working multiple
Right.
jobs. And this child is then being raised in that environment, and you're struggling mentally, socially, emotionally. The child's struggling mentally, emotionally, and socially. The dad's doing whatever he's doing, never in their life. And then you just continue to repeat this cycle.
Well,
And
it's
just,
funny you mentioned that, BJ. I was thinking, Sherry, I think you and I talked about this when we were getting ready for this conversation. I said, you know what? Marriage isn't what it used to be, right? Like people get married, they get divorced like 20 minutes later. I think I saw was that rapper Kevin Gates who got married and to Brittany Renner, and I told my wife, I said, yeah, I give it about a year, and they didn't even take a year. I think they got divorced 40 days later, but you can get divorced pretty quickly.
oh yeah,
And I said, you know what? I think actually marriage isn't what we think, in the sense that the real marriage is having a child with a person,
mm,
right? Like that's when you really lock together, right? I mean, assuming the baby does not die. If that baby
right,
lives, y'all linked. You're connected. That person ain't going away. Not if they want to connect with their child. Now, sometimes the parent runs off and disappears, but literally, you dealing with that person forever. It's like starting a business that you can never disappear, can never go bankrupt. You can't walk away from. You're not supposed to anyway,
right,
right? So really, it's fascinating. Like when you think about just the power of sex, having sex with a person, that person might be literally, you might be literally locking yourself to that person for life. I don't know if people think about that enough, Sherry. I mean, what do you think? I mean, it seems like that's really a big part of the problem, economically and otherwise.
I agree. So, um, it's also very interesting being a woman and having this conversation because it's just like keep your legs closed and men are gonna, follow that kind of thing. And your first reaction is like, "Ooh, that's cringy," but then you think about it, and it's like, I am Gen X. I was raised with the, you should wait until you get married, kind of thing. The generation before us, they were um generally married before they had children and those sorts of things and just thinking about the science behind monogamy, and you're the econ guy, but having one partner increases your mental health and it increases your physical health and it increases your emotional health, and there are so many other things besides just STDs that can come from having multiple partners, multiple pregnancies. You can literally carry the DNA of the father inside of your uterus for like 40 years. It's called microcrimeria. I know your face. I was like, exactly. So, and then that DNA can actually be passed on to other children. So it's like, let's say you get married and then you have a baby, and we're going to say something happens to the father. Okay. And then you have another one. That DNA is still being carried inside of you and can be passed on to the next kid with the next dude. So imagine that you have four baby daddies. No wonder the youngest one is usually the baddest one. Not only does it have its own stuff going on, but it's got DNA from everybody else, including its brothers and sisters, running around in its system. It's pretty crazy.
Maybe
But
the baby's name should be Dan, like DNA spelled in a different way. They call him Dan.
but when you think about it, I kind of think about it like I was in that generation with like Salt and Pepper and TLC and all this stuff where it's like if I want to take a guy home with me tonight, it's none of your business, carrying condoms, all that stuff. It's like women's liberation, all those kinds of things. But honestly, what exactly did it accomplish? Now we do have more single moms out there who are raising kids by themselves and those sorts of things. And when you're looking at some of the statistics that I saw online. Men who are single with children have about $8,000 more for every $30,000 that they make than single women with children.
Mm.
So
Mm.
it's like that's a huge deal too. So it's like these men out here want to, I'm for research purposes. I'm in a lot of crazy Facebook groups. and, so, and you
Wow.
listen to some of these things and they're talking about, you know, these women need to be paying half on the dates and they need to be doing this. And if you ask somebody to buy their, hey, can we stop and pick the kids up something on the way home from a date or whatever, they lose their minds. And when
Mm.
you're thinking about you've decided to date a single mother, knowing what the economics is it really that big of a deal to pick up a Happy Meal? I'm just saying.
No,
But
I mean,
it's
well, it shouldn't be, right? But it's kind of like the world, the world will give you whatever you'll accept, and whatever you feel like you deserve, right?
yeah,
And so generally, it's kind of like it becomes one of these crazy things where you have all these low vibrational conversations on the internet about relationships, basically broke dudes complaining that women want to go to the Cheesecake Factory, right? But then you've got women, complaining that men are doing this wrong and doing that wrong. When really what you're really talking about are groups of people that still haven't learned discernment and discipline. And what and really when you talk about so-called liberation, I've seen that liberation happen on the feminist side. If I want to take a guy home with me tonight, it's none of your business, right? Okay. And then you have the men. Their version of liberation, like the male version of feminism, is when you have the men that are basically rejecting black women for different reasons and just complaining and we're holding them accountable, but you're not holding yourself accountable, right? Accountability has to start at home. You can't hold her accountable unless you're holding yourself accountable because as BJ was mentioning earlier, he talked about how the behavior of men is set by the standards of women, but also I believe that the behavior of women is set by the standards of men. I think that men, we have testosterone, which makes us natural leaders. And when we set our standards at a certain level, women naturally adapt to the man, adapt. That's a biological thing. Women will adapt to what kind of leader she feels like you are. She feels like you can depend on, she can depend on you and stuff like that. So in a way, it's kind of like you can't fix this mess, right? It's never going to go away. But generally, I would say if I'm in the middle of the mess and I don't want to be in the mess, I level my own standards up. What does that mean? And then once I level my own standards up, then I have the right to say to you, "Hey, look, my standards are up here. What are yours?" And if you don't meet the standard, then I'm sorry. We're not doing this. So what do you think on that, BJ? In terms of just like we can't. There's a saying that says everybody wants to change the world, but nobody wants to change themselves.
Right.
Right. And I remember, the only big bone to pick I had with Kevin Samuels was because I didn't hate everything he said. People thought but it's not because it wasn't black or white for me. But the big bone I had to pick was I said to him directly, I said, you have all these thumbnails of your videos where every single one of them is making fun of women and talking about what women are doing wrong. And that's feeding into the narrative of irresponsible men because they don't want to look at themselves in the mirror. They want to say it's the women, it's the women, it's the women. And I didn't agree with that because I said if you're truly an empowered man, you're not gonna be controlled by the behavior of women. Women are not gonna, you can't say, you can't run around because the white women do it all the time. White women will do something stupid and then say, the man made me do it. The man, he tricked into me. He tricked me into that is unacceptable. But you have men that say the same thing. So what do you think about that in terms of us just understanding personal accountability in the middle of all this?
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, there has to be personal accountability on both sides, right? So, like it wasn't a post necessarily to that I put out there to say, "Hey, women, like you're terrible," but it was a post for us together, right? As black people, because again, I'm B1 too. All right. So I'm all the way B1. So as the black family, right? For black people and black family, I just look at our situation and saying, we both have to raise our standards. Why are we letting our carnal nature just control us and put us or will continue to put us further and further behind every other ethnic group on the planet? As Black Americans, we need to look at, all right, we're in this situation right now, and it's not good. how can we change it? And so for me, what when I had started my business, and then wound up terminating it, but it was a Black business directory here in the state of Colorado. And I thought at that time, I was thinking, if we have these Black businesses, then we can have people, Black people, and other outside groups also go and purchase from those Black businesses because they can find them. And then that's going to be the economic driver for us. And then I started taking a step back and I'm like, okay, is it really the businesses or is it more the family unit? Because if we're not teaching people, right, through our families and through unity, because we don't, quite frankly, and you tell me you're more of a traveler than I am around this world, but Black Americans do not understand unity right
Mm,
now. Like we are completely ununified. We exist as an ethnic group out here, but we don't have a community. We're not together. We don't have a mission, a purpose like the Jews or the Arabs or the Africans or white Americans or any, the Latinos. Like you got the Latinos out here, they're tearing up LA and all this stuff. We wouldn't be able to do that, like not in unity and at least not in a positive way. Go back to our LA riots, that's a completely different story. But, so like, how do we get unified in order to then move forward in patronizing Black businesses, in hiring Black people at those businesses, in investing for the long term? And that starts with the family. So, as each one individual from the male perspective, from the female perspective, raise their standards, say, listen, I might have been born in the projects or I might have, been born to a single mother, but I don't want that for my family. I don't want that to continue. Okay, I'm going to change, whether I'm man or woman. I'm going to do something different. And so I want this in my life. I want nice things. I don't want to just smoke weed and work at Amazon warehouse. Nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying, if that's the lifestyle you want, you gonna get the lifestyle that comes with that. Or do I want that mansion over there in the nice neighborhood? I want that. So I have to do something different. Well, one of those things differently is that the people who live in that mansion, they're in a relationship together and they have purpose. They're driven, right? In a lot of those cases, they're marrying certain people because they need to keep that status up. They're not marrying, you don't have this CEO or vice president marrying the Amazon worker smoking weed. They're marrying somebody else from a family that's similar to theirs so they can keep their status elevated. So if you want that, if that's where you want to go, and that's where I think we as Black Americans should be striving for, then we have to change our family dynamic. And the men definitely have to step up and say, listen, I don't want, Bumquisha out here who's shaking her
Bonquisha.
tail who's shaking her tail in the club every Saturday and Friday and Saturday night and trying to get 2 for 1 and got the lashes that hanging out here off of her face looking like feathers. Like, no, I don't want that. This is the type of woman I'm looking for. And then he goes and pursues that, and then those women start seeing, well, hey, that guy's got something about him, just like what was it, the movie The Last Dance, where they were like, hey, why's the white girl always come in here and take our men? And they knew that he was the good one. Well, we need to, as men, be more of the good ones. And then those ladies, then to your point, Dr. Boyce, need to start elevating and saying, well, shoot, I want to get one of the good ones. What do I need to do? Well, you got to level up. You got to stop
Well,
going out here and
well,
giving it to all the Pookies and Ray Rays.
well,
You got to have some standards.
let me jump in. I want to ask
Yeah.
you this. So Sherry, when BJ was talking about leveling up and that choice to level up, a lot of the research, and I'm sure you know about this, says that you tend to pick based on your parent, your opposite sex parent, right?
Mm.
So whether if your daddy was a bum, you're gonna pick a bum like your daddy. A lot, not all the time, but in many cases, right? Um, and I know I didn't even notice how much my wife looks like my mother until they took a picture together, and my wife's mother said she looks more like you than I do.
Mm.
And also my mother and my wife have the same profession. And I have the
Mhm.
same profession as my wife's father. We were both college professors. So what do you do? What do you think about those people who maybe their opposite sex parent was not ideal and they're trying to level up like BJ's talking about, but their subconscious is plotting against them. Like literally you're your number one greatest hater. Your subconscious is standing up the other side of you, is blocking you from what you really want to be. What's the like? How do you even confront that?
So that is so interesting that you mentioned that because we were talking, BJ and I were talking about that the other day when it came to one of my standards, which is height. And I think part of that comes from my upbringing, that nurture piece. The man that was in my house, my stepfather, was 6'2". So my concept of what a a strong male looks like happens to look like this. Now, he was English and Cherokee. I'm not looking for that one. I'm definitely looking for somebody with some melanin, but he was also super hardworking, made a lot of money, etc. So it's like that kind of makes sense. But his personality, we both know, was absolutely crap. So I think in those situations with um absent parents or parents that aren't so great. I mean, I've gotten very lucky in that my daughter's father was not particularly wonderful, but she has an amazing godparent, So it's like there's that part. Or you pick people that you know who have qualities that you want your kids to instill. So I happen to have grown up in a very middle class white household, which sounds kind of crazy, but my mom is white and I grew up in a sundown town with her and my English and Cherokee father. Like I had no real concept of blackness till I got to college and then I dove in and became Sherry X. So it was like there's that. So I always had this concept of um being having more, I guess you could say. So it's like it's about exposure, I guess. So making sure that our kids have exposure to people who are doing more, seeing people doing more, giving them opportunities to learn things that some of these other kids just take for granted. I did a talk at my daughter's old school, and I had asked the kids to raise their hand if they had ever been out of the country. Half of the kids in that room had raised their hands. If I do that at my school, unless we're talking about they went back home to see Abuela in Mexico, like none of them have been to Africa or South America or Europe or Asia or any of those places. We're not getting that kind of exposure. So it's just like we need to, even if we haven't been exposed to it, we need to know that there's more out there and we need to make sure that our kids
Well,
see
so
people who are doing more and give them
okay,
opportunities to see more.
okay. So what if you're not the kid? What if you're not the parent? What if you are the person? Like, what if you what I mean is like if you what if you're a woman or a man and you're looking for a partner and your opposite sex partner? I mean, we got one thing we don't talk enough about is the fact that 76% of all black girls grow up without their father in the house. And I know that we got the studies that say black men are the most involved fathers and things like that. I think that's fine. I don't have a problem with those studies, but I'm really concerned about the fact that we've been led to believe that a father who doesn't live with you is the same or better than a father who does not. Or the same as a father who's in the house, right? I know growing up, there were so many touch points with my dad we had on a daily basis that I would have had if he lived down the street and saw me every weekend,
Right.
right? I mean, I'm talking about literally waking me up in the morning, talking before breakfast, talking as soon as we got home from work, correcting me at dinner time. So when you consider the fact that there were so many black women that grew up without the father in the house because of what these government policies led us to believe about ourselves, um, I think that there's a void. I think there's an issue there. I think that what happens is that because that father figure is not in the house, that you can kind of study and understand, you start to maybe I don't know, maybe they start fantasizing about these men maybe that they see in the media. Like you have those two Disney princesses that went off and got pregnant by rappers, and of course, just like most rappers, they dumped them a month later, right? So now
Mhm.
your child does not have a father, in at least not a regular active two-parent household, and you were a freaking Disney princess. You could have dated men around the world. You were
Right.
world famous with millions of dollars in the bank, but you choose this raggedy ass piece of shit who don't even want to be a dad. That is odd to me. But where that probably comes from is I think that we've been trained to glorify the wrong stuff.
Hmm.
We've been trained to look at men who are not built to be fathers and to say, "Oh yeah, I definitely want that man's blank inside. Women. Like I want to be with him because the white man made him rich. The white man made him famous. The man made him a role model. Remember, Diddy used to be one of the biggest role models in the whole black community. I don't know if anybody
Yep.
remembers that, but there was this. Remember, Voter Died. Diddy was telling black
Oh
people who
yeah.
to vote for. He was a black leader. He was on the cover of magazines. And so and I personally knew young women. I knew a young woman who said her only dream in life was to work for Diddy.
Mm.
Right. So imagine if she'd gotten her dream, right? She might be up in the courtroom testifying how many STDs she caught at Diddy parties. So a lot of times I think it almost seems like there has to be almost like a reset button where like lots of therapy and healing to just realize like, no, this ain't how you build a family, my friend. This is not how you build anything sustainable and structured. You build solid things with solid people. And
Mm.
like a solid family is built with a solid man with a solid woman. And a lot of people are chasing people who look good on the outside, but they're incredibly broken on the inside. So, BJ, what would you say would be like the protocol? I mean, you're married, right? How many
Yep.
years you been
Married.
married?
Been married. We just crossed 17. Yeah, 17 years.
17 years. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. And you don't even look that old. You what, 40?
It was yeah. I'll be 40 this year in just a couple of months. Yeah. So we
That's
were married literally
wow.
3 weeks after we graduated college.
That is so cool. Where'd you graduate from college from?
I went to an HBCU, Lincoln University in Missouri.
Oh, that's a good school. And your wife went there too?
Now she actually went to the University of Missouri, 30 minutes up the road. So the big state school, Mizzou.
I love that. I love that. And you said you have one child, right? A
Yep.
daughter, 12-year-old? Okay.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
so tell me, maybe, and you can respond to anything I just said. I'm not even gonna frame it as a question. I'm sure you got something to say on that, but what would you say would be a misperception people have when, because everybody same claims they're looking for the same thing. They claim they're looking for this lasting, permanent. They want to be BJ. They want 17 years of marriage and all that. What would you say are some of the biggest myths that people have in their head that keeps them from ever being able to truly achieve a dream like that?
Yeah, I mean, like overall, what I've seen, right? This is just anecdotal, and what I've seen in my family, what I've seen across the board is that there's a point that everybody's kind of like moving along this spectrum like together. And then you come to that fork in the road. What decision am I going to make? Right. And so I chose, I had the same opportunities as a lot of my family members. They had the same opportunities as me coming up. And I don't say this boastfully, but I am the, so to speak, the star of the family, if you will. And they all look at me as, okay, yeah, you think you're better than us, this is that and the other, but they had the same opportunities to choose the way that I did. Go to college, not go to college. Get a job, not get a job. Do drugs, not do drugs. Have a family, not have a family, and just go out here and doing all these things. So I think across the spectrum, like the misconception is that you don't have a choice, and you do. And you as an individual have to say, what do I choose? Do I choose life or do I choose death? Right? In every sense of the word, everything that we do is our choice. And so you can choose to follow the straight and narrow and do the right thing, invest, go to school, speak politely, work hard, have a family, what have you, or you can choose to do this thing. And it's really about your choice and what you want to do. And like I said, that's what people think is like they're forced into this. No one forced you into that. I'm a product of a single parent household until I was 10 and a half. I was born out of wedlock too. So I can have cousins that grew up with me about the same age who had that situation, but they chose differently. And just kind of tying back into Sherry's point about the observation, right? And getting out and seeing different things. I think that's paramount for any person's development to see beyond their specific circle. And so people think that, oh, this is all that I have. We see this not just in the family relationship for Black people, but also just how we go about pursuing careers. Everybody wants to be a ball player now, or a rapper, or I want to be a drug dealer, because that's what you see. Too many of us see growing up in poor neighborhoods is That's success, right? The big gang member, the drug dealer, the ball player, the rapper, musician, whatever. That's successful. And we don't see the hardworking Huxtables, right? We don't see Uncle Phil. We don't see them because they're not in that neighborhood. And so you got to get out of here. I remember there's a the reason I wound up going out to the university I went to was one of my friends who was a year ahead of me. He went out there and we were taking him to orientation during the summer, me, him, and another friend. And the other friend, that was the first time that he had literally been out the city of Denver at 18 years old. He had never been out of the city of Denver. Not anywhere, any other city in Colorado, no nothing. First time he got out and he saw a whole different world. So, and I think how many other young poor black people are in that same situation where they don't see anything beyond their neighborhood or the city that they live in. And so you have to get them exposure not only to outside of their comfort zone or where they've been, but also to see other people, other examples of success, other examples of family. This is what it looks like to have a stable family. You might not have seen that in your family with your immediate family or your grandparents or your aunties and uncles or your friends. You might not see a stable family, but they have to choose also to want to see those things when opportunity comes about for them to do so.
Well,
Can I jump in
um,
and just say something
oh,
real
please
fast?
go ahead.
So about the reset piece that you brought up, BJ, and how you can absolutely reset. So just my history, kind of, my childhood was not great. So it was like, um, I was one of those girls in college, who was, if I want to take a guy home with me tonight, it's none of your business. But when you look at my background, it also kind of makes sense. So it's like your point, Boyce, with we need a lot of mental health supports and we need to be talking about some of the trauma and things like that because with my childhood, there was a lot of physical, sexual, racial, mental abuse. And it's like, and that's the reason why I was like, this doesn't really matter. We're just going to go out and have fun. It's just like, it doesn't mean anything until later when there was a reset and my self esteem got a little higher and, those sorts of things. But at that point, now I have a child, you know, by myself,
Mm.
raising her on my own. I was lucky enough to be really smart and, I finished college and, did what I needed to do to get her where she needed to go. And she has surpassed me educationally and, all of those things, which is fantastic. And I'm doing okay, but it's also looking at the people in my family too. So it was like my mother still is pretty dependent on people to this day. And I was like, I don't want to live like that. So sometimes looking at negative examples is also a good idea too. So I was like, all right, well, I'm going to go to school and I'm going to get this degree because she has no education and look where she's at. And
Mm.
it's that determination and the discipline and looking at the consequences of what happens when you do these things or don't do these things. I feel like there needs to be more accountability and less excuses. So, you'll hear people all the time in these groups talking about, well, I can't do this because I've got this going on or this going on. And it's like you can literally do anything that you want to do with enough determination and drive to make it happen. Um,
Mm.
you just have to hit that reset button and decide that that's what you're going to do.
Well, you know what
Because
let me, I'll jump in. What I think
Mhm.
on that is it's interesting, right? Like I believe in all that. Set goals, work hard, accomplish things. What I decided a long time ago was that I would stop expecting other people to want to approach life the way I approach it, right?
Mm.
I think it's okay to be a regular person, right? Like I'm not gonna look down on you because you drive a truck or something. Like I admire people like that. You're handling business. Good for you. I think that what is important though, about what you're saying is I think we got to critically think about the trade-offs and have some accountability in terms of understanding rewards and consequences.
Mm.
Right? Like I think that some of the conversation you hear politically is one that kind of just says, okay, if you're black, you're supposed to suffer no matter what you do. So you might as well not even try because your life's going to be messed up because you're black, right? And that's a terrible message because that makes me then say, well, why should I learn how to read? Because all that's going to happen is a white man's going to slap the book out of my hand and pee on me, and you know what I mean?
Right.
Like you really feel like it's so disempowering. Like there are so many people who claim to be empowering us by reminding us that we have no power, right? But then there's the other piece of that too, where earlier when we were talking about liberation, and we are talking about like women's liberation and everything else. I've never been a person to tell anybody where they should or should not be liberated, but you got to be careful. I look at so-called liberation. It's like it's the devil's play. It's the devil's credit card. And why would I call it that? Well, because you think liberation means that you can do whatever you want to do, which it does. But then they trick you into believing that liberation means you can do whatever you want to do and there's no consequences for that.
That part.
That
Right?
part.
That's why I call it the devil's credit card. Because remember in college when they used to give you those credit cards,
Oh
and you
yeah.
were like, free money, woo! And then you find out that shit ain't free, and you're like, oh damn, I gotta pay it back now. I got all this debt load, this burden now that came from the fact that I was suddenly liberated, right? You gave me the card, I'm liberated now. I'm running to the mall, I'm doing my thing, but then later on, the credit card comes due, right? And I think that to me is important. Like any young person doesn't understand that. Like you can think that you can go through life, screw 10,000 people, and just live your best life and not make any investments in your future, never invest yourself educationally, never build anything structured, and your life is going to be just as good as the person who did the opposite of what you did. That's bullshit.
Right.
That's bullshit. That violates every principle of the universe that relates to cause and effect. That's a violation of investing principles. There's almost never a single person anywhere that can invest nothing and end up wealthy. If you spend all your money, you're gonna be broke like all the other spenders, right?
Right.
So the sacrifice is required for you to have the life that you want. And if your life isn't what you want it to be, rather than saying, "Oh, the white man did it," or "Oh, it just happened because I'm black," I think a more empowering message is to say, maybe I didn't sacrifice as much as I should have. Maybe I don't have a good relationship because I didn't take the time to learn how to have a good relationship, how to pick the right person, how to be the right person, right? Like I'm so worried
Right.
about what you bringing to the table. I ain't brought shit to the table, but I'm looking at what I'm like, what did you bring? Because I'm a taker. Ain't nobody going to be with you. You just all you doing is taking and you ain't bringing nothing. Shut up. Right.
Right.
So I kind of think that just common sense. This is why politics drives me crazy. Is it kills our common sense, and they put us in this little Negro victim box, and we take it, and and then next thing you know, your life is a mess. It like you have no idea where those four kids with four baby daddies came from. You have no idea why you got a big long criminal record, no money in the bank, no life insurance, no health insurance, and six babies mamas. Well, you know why. You just don't want to understand cause and effect. That's my
Hmm.
2 cents.
Yep.
BJ,
but
please.
but
Or Sherry.
society and but I was raised by a single mom and but this and this. There's so many excuses, such little accountability. People just expect something for nothing. I feel it's that participation trophy, mentality. I'm just supposed to be handed this six-figure job even though I've done nothing to get it.
Hmm.
It's fascinating, you know, how that works. And then, you know, there are no consequences, or so you
Yeah.
think, until
I
there are
mean, I liken it.
consequences.
I liken it to people who want to have a nice body, right? Want to have that six pack. And it's like, oh yeah, like I want to have this six pack, but I'm gonna eat McDonald's, sit on the couch, and
Why are you
watch
calling me
TV.
out, BJ?
Hey,
No,
I did not say anything like that, Sherry. Oh my gosh.
You
playing up.
But
you you
but
you
it's
you gonna try to use Ozempic to get to the Olympics?
right, right. And it's like, wait a minute, like you're not putting in the time, the effort, the sacrifice to get that six pack, right? You're not going to you got a gym membership, but you ain't seen the inside of it since you signed up. So,
Yeah.
McDonald's ain't good for you. Why you keep passing by the fruit and the veggies in the grocery store and go right for the cookies? You know good and well, like especially as an adult, you've heard all the nutrition, you've seen with your own eyes, you know what's going on, right? So
Mhm.
that's what I look at is the same kind of situation is that We know all these things, we see it, but yet we're like, oh no, I should just get wealthy. Oh no, I should just have a family. But you didn't put in the work for it. You're not putting in the work. If you don't, you can't go get a good grade by just showing up.
Mhm.
You have to write that paper. You have to read
Well,
those books. You have to study. You have
as a
to
teacher,
actually
if
pass
you
the
had,
test, right?
yeah, no child left behind, you gonna pass anyway until
Well,
you get to high school, but that's a whole
right?
nother story.
And so
Um,
and so
but
going
yeah,
back to that then, Sherry, right? Is that society pushes these narratives, and I like what you said, Dr. Boyce, is because this was in that chat or in that post, a lot of times was live your best life. Well, yeah, you
Mhm.
can live your best life, and then there's consequences. What are you going to do about that? And if
Mhm.
you're not okay with those negative consequences after you live your best life, then maybe you should choose to change how you live your best life.
Yeah, I think it comes down to balance, and I'm gonna hand the mic to you, get you two, because I gotta go get those groceries I told y'all
Oh
about.
yeah.
But by the way, I want everybody to know I'm speaking to Mr. BJ Joyce. He's the founder and creator of the Black Friday Show, as well as the Colorado Black Owned and Operated Facebook group, and also Miss Sherry Mitchell, who is the host of a show called Love Logically, and the history adventure. I can't read my own writing. And I was gonna say the history agenda, which that would be a good one too. The history agenda,
you
right?
know,
Right. And everybody, if you could, please hit the thumbs up button, thumbs up, share, subscribe. Also, I want to remind everybody if you want to join us for our morning finance class, it's 100% free. Text the word morning to the number 87948. Text morning to 87948. Now, I'm going to read y'all a couple stats and then I'm going to go get my groceries right quick. Okay, so I found these stats about broken families. I want to get your thoughts on some of these. I'll read a couple. One is children from single parent families have a median net worth that is 70% lower than
Mm,
those from two parent households, according to the Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances. Also, the Brookings Institute found that only 26% of boys from low income single mother households reach middle class or higher by adulthood compared to 42% from two parent households. What do y'all think about those stats that most boys from low income single parent households do not reach middle class status, and that children of single parent households have a lower net worth? Ladies first, Sherry, and then BJ. Go for it. I'm gonna step away for a second.
go for it.
I absolutely think that that is correct, and I would love to see it broken down by race because I bet it's even a bigger split
Oh yeah.
between, you know, white families and black families and white boys and black ones because that is just how economics works in this country because of the way that the systems are set up. Um, and how are you supposed to reach middle class status if you haven't seen it? Since most, he just said that 70% of them basically, you know, are living in poverty, right?
Right.
So it's just like, what are we going to see?
Yeah. Yeah.
Where are
100%.
we going to go? Like you said, your friend never left Denver. It made me think about how even I lived with my mom when when I graduated from high school in this little tiny farm town. And I thought about it. The first time that I ever really left the area in central Illinois was when I went to go visit my biological father in Florida. And we went to a play in Chicago.
Mm,
Like, it was crazy because I'm thinking to myself, dude, it's been 18 years and the only thing I've ever done is really like go see my family. And then we saw a play in Chicago. But, you know, now I've been all over the place.
right.
So, and I've seen all kinds of different things and we've got to get our kids out there.
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely we got to get the kids out there. And then, yeah, I mean, to the point about the poverty level for that, that just circles back wholeheartedly to the black experience in America anyway, is that we've been kept down as the lowest economic denominator, so to speak, ethnic group. Like that's why when and it's funny, when they talk about black jobs, if you will, it's those lower wage jobs that they're really talking about. And yes, if you have, and I don't really want to go down this rabbit hole, but if you have another group of people who's willing to come and do the jobs for less, right? And they happen to be from across the border, and those were the jobs that at least Black people were able to get because we've been kept down economically, socially, educationally for so long, then yeah, that's going to contribute, right? I mean, prime example, Sherry, I'll tell you, obviously, we're here in Denver, in Colorado, me and you, but a lot of Latinos work at like fast food restaurants, right? They work at hotels. Well, when I went to Middle Missouri for college, guess what? Guess who had those jobs because there's not Latinos there? Black folks. It was cool because I actually went to, the fast food restaurant. And they could, I can understand them when they were repeating my order back. And so, like,
It's
it,
getting
it
worse
was
and worse
great.
all the time.
I know,
I
right? It
know.
was great. Nothing
Yeah.
against my Latino people, but I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
I didn't
And
have to
we
see
are
the.
in what used to be Mexico, so we really can't complain too much about,
I
the
mean,
I'll just say.
I mean, technically, all of this used to be for the native people, right?
Mhm.
But so we can go that far too. But
Yeah. But they are partially also indigenous, so there's that.
right, right. Well, a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
But to that point, right, is that economically, I can totally see why, if you're coming from a single parent household, why you're going to be economically disadvantaged. That kind of wraps into my whole point of we have to unify the Black family. Is that as you have both parents in the household, they can raise that child together. They can see a family unit working together through all the ups and downs through relationships, because we know not every
Mhm.
relationship is perfect. But they get to see that. They can learn and they can grow from that. They can then benchmark themselves based off of what they're seeing. They can see mom and dad are providing together for me and the household. They see how finances get run either good or bad, but they at least get to see those things and they get to see it from two people. Both you get the female and male energies in the household, and then they then take that and elevate, okay, so here's my poor broke standard. Now with two-person household, my standards are here financially,
Mhm.
educationally, emotionally, and I need a mate who's also going to equal me up there, right? So
Mhm.
that changes a whole lot of different things when you start selecting your mate, so to speak, whether you're a woman or you're a man, and you select them with standards and you do it, so to speak, and we'll go back to this, you do it before you have to engage in sex with them, where you can have, again, those negative consequences. Can you have sex without having a kid? Sure. But guess what sex is for? Sex is for having kids,
Mhm. And
right?
there's still going to be an energy exchange, which can also alter your brain chemistry. So that's a
Mhm.
whole different story too, because of the different chemicals that are involved in sex, whether it is the dopamine, which makes you want to continue to do it, or what is norepinephrine actually can increase, and so does cortisol in the early phases
Mhm.
of that attraction. It's like the stress hormone. You're all excited, and you're like, "Oh
Yeah.
my god!" And
Like,
that's
ooh.
where the butterflies come from and stuff. And you're just like, "Woo!" And then later on, the vasopressin and the oxytocin and things like that will kick in, and that those are our bonding hormones.
Mm.
So even if you're engaging in sex and it's not doing anything, to create a human, it's still creating connections
Yes.
somehow.
Right.
And I find it fascinating too, because like in that post that you put, people are like, well, you got to test drive a car before you buy it. And I was like, it's a person, not a car. Like
Right.
my car has standard features and I can change from day to day. So
Right.
there's that. And in some of these groups, whenever I bring up the idea or say things like, they'll be like, "Oh, how soon should you have sex, when you start dating?" First of all, to me, dating is about um meeting people. It is the initial getting to know someone phase. We
Right.
shouldn't be having sex during the dating phase. Um,
No, no,
I
no,
say
no.
no sex
Because you
until
taking them home.
relationship.
It's none of their
Yeah,
business,
yeah. And yeah, that was me back in the day, but I grew up and got some, we've been reading books and doing therapy and doing all this stuff, and it's like, nope. Um, but you bring up the 90-day rule and see how many men lose their whole minds.
Right.
But there's literally science behind the 90-day rule. And think about how many people we have wanted to punch in the throat after knowing them for 90 days. Like,
Right.
come on now. It's 3 months. You can't like control yourself for 3 months, is what
And
we're
so,
talking about, to get to know someone and find out who they are as a person.
right. So to that point, right? Within that 90 days, that's where a lot of people are having sex and then getting pregnant,
Mhm.
right? And
I
so they're
mean,
doing that, they get
I did.
pregnant, and then next thing you know, they find out, oh crap, I actually don't like this person, but now I
Yes.
have to deal with them.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And then that now you have a whole spin out relationship between the parents for whatever's going on. And then this person's like, well, shoot, I don't like you neither. And then I'm gonna go mess with, Sheila, or, you as a woman are like, yeah, I don't like you. I'm gonna go mess with Tommy because, Tommy listens to me, but I've only been talking to him for 10 days right now. Right. And then you repeat that, you know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah.
and then it just continues to spiral. And then that's the state of Black families right now in America.
Yeah. I knew my daughter's father for probably 4 months before it was a drunken night with
Mm,
a condom that went missing. And then she was
mm.
here. I say that the universe wanted her to be here. And that's fine. I'm like, there I enjoyed all of that, well, most of it. Um the the doing the mom things and that kind of stuff, but it's like it's not easy. And when you do that 2 or 3 or 4 times,
Right.
and you know the consequences,
Right.
what are we gonna do with, you know shoot, having sex too soon and you're getting emotionally attached because of all these chemicals that go on in your brain. It's like people kill people over love.
Hmm.
Nobody's killed anyone over a penis that I know of, but love is a whole different story,
Right.
so thinking about those brain chemicals and like people getting too attached. I mean, people stalk people
Yeah.
harm people kill their entire families, because of being rejected and love. Yeah, we ain't
Didn't
playing.
that happen to Jennifer
We
Hudson?
need to go.
Didn't her whole family get killed by her sister's ex-boyfriend or something? Remember that? Do
Oh,
you remember
Is that
that?
the story? Oh wow.
Yeah, yeah. Jennifer
oh,
Hudson had a sister who had a crazy boyfriend from Chicago, and apparently he shot the mother, her sister. I don't know if she killed her sister, one of her sisters, and her
Hmm.
nephew. He even went and killed the 7-year old, from what I understand.
Oh
And
wow.
ironically, as ironic as it is, I think Donald Trump actually let Jennifer stay at the Trump Tower Hotel after that happened. I guess so she could be safe because the guy was clearly
Coming after
nuts.
her. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it speaks to one of these other things that I think people don't have enough thought about is there are a lot of cultures where they are very picky. Families that have wealth are very picky about who you let in the family.
Yeah.
yeah,
They don't let you just come up and say, "Oh, well, she had a big butt and a smile. That's why I want her to be my wife." They're gonna be like, "Oh, Hilton and all,"
Right.
because a lot of times, basically, you have something that you're trying to preserve and protect. Like one
Mm.
of the biggest rules about wealth and money is protect what you have. If you don't protect what you have, then you won't keep it. So, protecting the wealth means protecting it not just from a sort of technical standpoint, like insurance policies and 401ks and diversification and all that. It also means protecting wealth from a lifestyle perspective, meaning like Shannon Sharp. You see, look at how much money Shannon Sharp's going to lose because he's choosing the wrong women. I mean that girl when he offered her that 10, I was furious when I found out that Shannon Sharp offered that lady $10 million and she turned it down. Think about this.
Right.
Like, how much of a case do you have to be a 21-year-old that passes up 10 million and says,
Yeah.
"No, I'm not interested because I know I can get 20, 30 million." She's gonna, by the time this suit's done, that OnlyFans model is gonna have more money than 90% of all HBCUs.
Yep.
What the fuck is that? I mean, that's crazy to me. That's just, that's sloppy. It's goofy. It's undisciplined. And this is a problem I think that black men we gotta face is that we are viewed as clowns by the world. We are viewed as undisciplined men. Like when people, again, I think it's wrong. I think it's overgeneralizing. Like when immigrant families warn their daughters, like, don't get pregnant by an African American male. But
Right.
we all know African American males who fit the description. We
Hmm.
know a lot of brothers who will, get you all jacked up with a baby and run straight for the hills
Hmm.
because there's a segment of the community, and these are glorified men. These are the men that get put on the biggest pedestals. These are the Little Wayne types and stuff like that that people look up to. This is the representation of the black male that basically is very anti-family, extremely anti-family. And we know that there are millions of men who don't fit that description, who take care of their kids, who do the right thing, who make good decisions, but that's not what they want to see. I think white media loves to see the black man. They like for him to show up as either a little boy, very childish, or a little girl, very feminine, or a clown.
Yep.
That's why the biggest, most highly paid black men in America are athletes, entertainers, or comedians. Those
Hmm.
are the three categories. When you watch the Olympics, you'll see Snoop Dogg sit with Kevin Hart, and they're like, yup, 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 yup. Everything's a fucking joke. Excuse my friend.
Right.
Everything's a joke, right? And so to me, I think we've got to kind of look at these stereotypical images and how it's affecting the behavior of some of the young men, because we got some 50-year-old men out here acting like 22-year-olds,
Yeah.
and that's not acceptable. BJ, please feel free to jump
Yeah.
in on that.
Well, you said a word twice already, and I want to circle back to this because it's probably the most important word that we don't use enough for Black people in general. Discipline,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Discipline. You have to have discipline, not just in your relationships, but in your finances, in your work ethic, in everything that you do. You get the narrative out here by Black people saying, oh, we're kings and queens, so on and so forth. And I'm like, listen, kings and queens don't do the things that y'all doing out here. Okay. They have discipline to
Mhm.
elevate themselves.
Exactly.
They're not gonna go around doing all the trashy things that you glorify out here from people. Like all the, Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion, WAP, like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, great music if you're into that kind of stuff, but it's like, are we really glorifying that? As Black people, like we continue to glorify those kinds of things, whereas before our music used to be truly real messages, love messages, power messages, strength and unity messages. And now we've just reduced ourselves down to our carnal behavior of sex and drugs and all this stuff. And we don't have discipline enough to pursue those purer forms of entertainment, of exceptionalism, of academia. We're not striving for greatness. I remember, and Dr. Boyce, you'll know this too. Your generation and before, we had so many Black folks that were going to HBCUs back in the day when they were really good. By the way, where they were getting PhDs and becoming doctors, lawyers, titans of industry, and so on and so forth. To where now, I mean, they're passing high school with 3.5, 3.8 GPAs and can't even read. And they're happy with that. I mean, what happened to that standard level of discipline in what I'm going to pursue? And that is one of the things that we need to focus on more as a people. Sherry, what you
And,
think?
and then they driving a $500,000 rental car to the prom with somebody
Man,
person on his riding a camel and somebody else.
Why are you
There
making
was,
my
there
eyes
was one there was one single mom who wanted to get a license to land a helicopter at the high school so her son could like land for his prom, right?
right.
So it's crazy. Hey, but you know what? I want to ask y'all about this. Did y'all see the interview where K Michelle, the singer, was talking to Cam Newton about broken families?
I
I
didn't
want to
see that
play.
interview.
I want to play this clip.
was
If
Go
y'all
it
for it.
okay?
go ahead, I'll play the clip, and then Sherry, I'd like for you to hear your thoughts on it, and then of course you as well, BJ. Um, this was really deep. A lot of people were talking about it, and I thought it was a great topic to discuss. Right? She really called out black men and our role in creating broken homes. And
Mm,
don't get me wrong, we know men and women make choices, right? So don't be acting like men are the only ones responsible. But when you're cheering on a Nick Cannon, like go on and have 10 kids with 10 women, you're cheering on Cam Newton, go on and have 6 kids with 6 women, however, whatever the number is, and it's all justified because they're getting the bag. That speaks to a very low vibrational perspective, because what you're not seeing is that 15 10 15 years later, these guys end up falling in that same category of 50 Cent, Dr. Umar Johnson, people like that, where your kids grow up and you ask them like, what do you think about your famous daddy? They're like, my daddy ain't shit.
Right.
My daddy was so busy being famous that he was never there for me. And so let me just pull this up. I'm gonna play this clip and y'all can tell me what you think. I'm gonna try to share the sound. I'm gonna try not to mess it up. All right, so let's see here. Here we go. All right, so I'm hitting the right. I think I'm hitting the right button, y'all. I think I'm getting it right. I'm start playing. Let me know if y'all can just give me a thumbs up if you can hear it. All right, so here we go.
Well, being in Atlanta all this time and then going to Nashville, where it's predominantly white. One, they go home at 5 and 6 o'clock when they're producing because they go home to their families. Being a country singer, if you are a singer in country music, you're a man. If you are not married, it is not respected. Family is respected in country music in that space. But in our space, we are singing about side chicks. We are glorifying a lot of women. That's not what happens in Nashville. You can't call a woman a bitch, a hoe in Nashville because they'll never even listen to your music and your professional career will suffer. At what point in the Black community do our men create real homes? And even talking, just our first time talking, and you said you didn't even mean for that to happen. Life happens. I'm not here to judge life. I'm looking at a successful Black man that has the ability to literally turn the narrative on Black family, you know? And my grandfather, I watched my uncles and everything. My whole family, they're married. I'm not the girl who didn't see what a man creating a Black family is supposed to be. So I'm asking right now, Black men, I got to my Black men to really step up for Black women and create families. Yeah. It's really not cool. Black men are attacking Black women. And it's not a cool, they're not creating homes. They're creating babies everywhere. It's not cool. And I'm asking you, other successful Black men, to be, you have to set an example as leads. The cute social media back and forth on Black women. Black women are strong. Black women are where you come from, this and that. So there probably isn't any sympathy for you and just life happening because there's so many other things around you going on that are not fair to Black women. What is going on with the Black family? We are consistently creating the cycle of kids who can't come home and see their daddy there. And they see their mama sad at night. At what point is the successful Black man in this world going to step in and really create structure? I see white men doing it every day. I get to witness the best of both worlds every day. Getting on stage singing R&B, being here in Atlanta, I get to sing R&B, but then I get to go to Nashville and be like, you mean you ain't staying out till 6 in the morning? You gonna go home to your family? You gonna write this song and leave at 5 and 6 because you gonna take care of your family and your wife? At what point do the successful Black men build Black families? We ain't gonna ever have a Black family if y'all don't do it. We're never gonna have it. It's just not gonna happen. So if your mentality is, yes, things happen, and I'm not knocking you for that. I didn't come here for that. But at what point do you take that Black woman? Do you be in a home and show your kids what it's like? You know, At what point do you take a grip to it, not make excuses for it or mantras and things like that? It is so unfair to Black women who have been the strength and builders of so many things. And I know life.
Okay, I'm gonna pause right there.
Yep.
Okay, so ladies first, Sherry, what are your thoughts on what you just saw?
As a historian, just knowing that our families have been torn apart by design, that's part of it, you know. But I'm also, from what BJ said earlier, from the time that they captured us in Africa, on the slave ships, often, splitting up families, watching your wife be raped in front of you, those kinds of things, not actually being able to be married, just all of those things. Then mass incarceration, after enslavement, which is enslavement, and then, all of those other things. Um, our families were not designed to be together. And I guess up until I would say the 70s and 80s, it's just like we now have more people who are having babies out of wedlock, and we're having, more single families and more men not in homes. And um it would be wonderful to get back to some of that. And I don't even think that it has to be the athletes and the rappers and those sorts of things who are creating this Black family. It needs to be the average everyday individual who, those men who are like, I want a woman who looks like my mom. I want a woman who, cooks like my mom. I value Black women, because then we are now raising a big old group of Black women who are like, I don't need a man, because there aren't men around who are being men for them. So we've got these really hyper masculine, women. We have super feminine men. It's like those things don't go together well. Um, and then we have women raising children to dislike men, and dislike Black men because of the things that were done to them. Um, thank goodness that wasn't something that I ever did, with Monique. I made sure that she had, you know, good male, Black male role models. But there are women out there who are like, girl, you don't need no man. You can have your babies. You can do what you want to do. You don't need them around. And then you've got boys who have been raised by women that, while women do a great job in making sure that boys are nurturing and caring and loving, there's also a certain part of masculinity that we are never going to be able to teach men. So they're missing out on that too. So, we're just setting up this vicious cycle for the families to continue to be apart,
Yeah,
unless we have the average
w-
person
well,
decide that they are going to bring the families back together, and not depending on these super famous individuals out here who, can do
yeah.
whatever
Well,
they want.
I think that's a good point, right? And I like what Sherry was saying, BJ, about there's actually a person that I've had some pretty interesting debates with online. His name's Anton Daniels, and something Anton said I had to agree with. A lot, me and Anton, we don't agree on a lot of stuff, but we did agree on this. Is he made a good point in which he said that it's we I'm going to say this for him because I believe I'm hoping he was saying this. It's not a one-sided thing, right? So K Michelle is saying Black men should do this to create families, and I think that's very important, 100% true without a doubt. But he also, Anton did mention that in order for that to happen, you're going to have to confront some things happening on the female side that are just very anti-family. He said
Mm,
you got to confront the sexy reds. You got to confront the glorification of Megan the Stallion. You got to confront the city girl culture. You have to deal with the fact that it seems to me, BJ, that in order for a man to make you a wife, you have to behave like a wife, and nobody knows what that means.
right.
That's a debate, but we know what, and most men can tell you when a woman is not somebody that they want to tangle with because women have a lot of power. Women can, accuse you of being an abuser. They can falsely accuse you of things you didn't do. They can push your buttons in ways that most people can't. And I see a lot of frustration from men who are like, yeah, I want to create a stable family. I want to get along with my wife, but she's making it hard because her undiagnosed, untreated trauma from childhood and her hatred of her daddy is spilling over into the way she's disrespecting me, and I'm not going to tolerate that. So I'm up out of here.
Right.
How do you deal with how do you fix that, BJ?
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, I'll address it like in addressing K Michelle first and foremost, is that while what she said I agree with, you also have to look at some of the things that, like how you talked about, how you have to look at how I'm just gonna say this. Look at how she was dressed while she's saying this. Where's the modesty, right? If she's saying, where's the men who gonna step up? Well, what if the men at that session and that podcast viewing were like, hey, can you cover up? Because we want a more modest woman here, so on and so forth. You don't have to cover up completely, but maybe you don't have them all hanging out like this. You know what I mean? Like, be a little bit more modest and especially in your delivery and what you're talking about, and then I guarantee this is what a lot of women will say. I don't know if she'll say it because I'm not asking her, but I bet you a lot of women would say, oh, I'm out here, I'm being cute. Like, this is how I dress. My body, my choice. I can do what I want. I'm living my best life. And it's like that right there, that attitude about what she can do versus what she's asking from men to do is a conflict, right? You like a lot of black women want strong black men to come and be that leader, be that provider. But as soon as they go to lead and say, this is what I want from my elevated status woman, if I want to take you to the next level, if I want to do something besides just oogle you or, do the nasty, if we want to get married, this is what my expectation is. Oh no, you trying to tell me what to do. You trying to control me. This is that and the other. So there's a conflict there between black men and the ones that women say that they want versus then how they're willing to act and behave. And that's what needs to be addressed on the women's side is if they want, again, making that choice, right? Making that choice and showing that discipline. If they want this type of man, then they have to act like they want that type of man. Same thing with men. If they want this type of woman, they have to act like they want this type of woman. You get what you want out of this world. If that's what you want, you're going to get it. And so you have to do the things necessary and be disciplined. I'm going to go back to that word because I like it. We have to be disciplined in our approach, in our behavior, and going after the things that we truly say we want and not acting the way that we
Mm.
really want.
Okay,
Do you
so
remember
Sherry,
the
so
phrase?
go
Sorry.
ahead, please.
Do you remember the phrase back in the day that they used to say, lady in the streets, freak in the sheets?
Right.
It's like
Right.
that is literally, like what was going through my head when you were saying that. Because you can, you know, there's a difference between Cardi B and Michelle Obama, when it comes to how they dress and their status and those sorts of things. And it's just like, yes, women have the right to wear whatever it is that they want to wear and not have anybody put their hands on them, not be sexually assaulted, all of that kind of stuff. And if you want a quality man and that's not what he's looking for and he asks you to cover up and you want to give attitude, then you deal with the consequences of your decision to choose your fashion over this man.
Mm.
So, it's like I can dress very nicely and be very attractive in clothing that doesn't show absolutely everything.
You know,
It's
I,
it's
I I think that's a great point that you make right there about just this idea of like, being honest. Like I think that what happened sometimes when the feminist movement, which was very necessary, by the way, I think that women were treated horribly and you needed something that was gonna liberate them. It was crazy how men treated women 50, 100 years ago. I didn't understand that. But sometimes we overcorrect. And it
Mhm.
almost seemed like the feminism movement became like this like power struggle where the goal was to give all power to women and to take away all power from men. And so what that did was that undermined a man's natural right to be a guide for the family and to kind of or to correct a woman and say, let's not do we're not going to do it that way. And that I think that puts a woman at a disadvantage when if she rejects any correction from a man as the evil patriarchy, right? Which we know we've heard people talk that way, then that does not make her an adequate partner because a lot of men are like, well, if I have no say in this household, then why would I even want to be here? Because I know growing up the advantage I had over an extreme feminist is I wasn't raised to think about any of that stuff. Like, I mean, my mother and father took correction from each other. So I naturally knew, yeah, if your wife says to do something a certain way, you're supposed to listen to her. You don't listen to her, she's not going to want to be with you. And I learned that from watching my mother listen to my father and my father listen to my mother. My father could tell my mother what to do, and sometimes she would do it. My mother would tell my father what to do. Sometimes he would do it. And
Mhm.
so when I hear people just blanketly reject the term like submission, like I ain't submitting to nothing, you know, well, maybe sometimes you need to submit to something. You need to, and maybe pick somebody that you trust enough, such that, like, if I submit to you and I allow you to advise me and guide me, you're not going to guide me off a cliff.
Mhm.
And that's and I would say that any woman who really wants to be married, I think you present yourself as someone who's working hard to be a good wife in terms of being an asset to the life of a husband. A good man is going to spot you and pick you out, right? You're just gonna have to dodge all the bad ones along the way, but a good man will pick you out. And I think the same thing is true for a man. If a man says, I want to prepare myself to be a husband and a leader and a father, so I'm going to work hard, acquire some things, get some wisdom, show my ability to be a leader of a space, right? Show myself to be a competent leader, right?
Yep.
Competence is appealing, and the right woman will look for you, and you got to dodge the bad ones to get to the good one. But I personally I think it's interesting when when I was thinking about Kay Michelle and you said that and you were talking about how she was dressed, I was like, huh, I wonder like where I wonder how far you go with that beach. I mean, how far can we as men, because I think that there should be. I think it might be picking battles. I think that might be it, right? Like I knew this guy. Let me tell you about this BJ. I'd like to get your thoughts on some of this. I knew this kid when I was back at Syracuse, and he was like 27, 28, and he was a virgin, and he had another virgin girl that he was praying with twice a week, and he really liked her, and she liked him, and she wanted to have sex with him really bad, but he didn't because he wanted to be pure. Well, he finds out from one of his friends that while she was waiting for him to possibly give her what she wanted, she started sleeping with the other guy,
Mhm.
right? Because she's like, I really want sex, right? And he said, man, this is sucks. These women are so bad. That none of them are pure anymore. And my conversation with him was like, honestly, I think most healthy women are not as pure as you think. They ain't as pure as they show up in the Bible. Like women get horny for a reason, and it's not because they're bad, dirty, nasty creatures. It's because that's what human reproduction is all about. And so she's 28, 29. Her hormones are telling her, okay, get
I
pregnant,
have baby.
you have a baby, right? And because you didn't make a move, it didn't happen. But I really kind of felt like he passed up on a woman that did want him, that she wanted to be whatever he was trying to make her, become. And her deceiving him was really her just really trying to say, okay, what box you want me to fit into, so I can fit in that box, so that we can go ahead and get to the business of being a couple. So I think sometimes it seems to me that sometimes those fantasies that we have of each other get in the way. Like, for example, women have the fantasy of that their husband would never look at another woman or whatever, and that is proven to be untrue time and time again. And I think the same thing is true with
I'm married,
men.
not blind.
Yeah, yeah. Or if you have men that are really caught up in like body count and all that, I
Mhm.
just I just never understood that. Like I've never ever asked the question like, well, how many men have you been with? Because I think at the end of the day, like she chose me, right? So even so that made me. I thought about that when you were talking about like Kay Michelle and how she was dressed. I'm not saying that would be my type per se, but I wonder like maybe it's a matter of picking the right battles though. Like, how do you discern that in terms of picking the right person, that kind of thing?
Yeah, and I mean, like, again, what she's wearing look great on her. Okay, so and that's and I'd say that's the point, and it's not necessarily like the dress, but it's all the other things that come along. Is that there are certain things that, especially as men, right? We're the hunters. We are focused more on like sex than like that's why so much of the porn industry like targets like men, right? That's why so much of like beer commercials like target men and so on and so forth, the racy photos and all this stuff, because they know what we want. We want to go hunt that buffalo, okay? And we're gonna go hunt that buffalo. It's that's our nature. And so when she's doing that, or when other women are doing that and they're saying, well, I want this man to be a family man. Well, okay, let's talk about that. As you have a family man and you have all these women out here dressing either like her or less, where's his eyes going? What's he thinking about? And then we promote that to these little girls, and we also promote that to these little boys to say, this is what you should look at. This is the type of girl that you should have. Like, that's okay. And I'm not saying that, same thing with dancing and all these other things, is that as we continue as either men, women, whatever, as a people to over sexualize each other, that's all we become is section is sexual, right? We're sexual beings and we just become sex. And therefore we negate all the other positive things that come from having a relationship, and then including sex in that relationship, right? And not just a relationship for the relationship's sake, but a relationship that's going to lead to something that we can build on for each other and then for a subsequent family later on. So that's what I look at is, hey, yeah, if she wants to dress that way or other women want to dress that way, okay, understand what you're attracting then. You're attracting somebody now for sex,
Mm.
not for all the other things that you're really saying, that, right? You're speaking one thing, but you're showing a whole nother.
I think that's a great. I think Sherry, that BJ made a great point. It's like if I want to start a fire and I use all paper and no wood, that fire is not going to last for very long. It's going to fire. It's going to blaze real high and it's going to be real short. And even though it takes more discipline to put the wood in there, because you get pissed off because the wood doesn't catch on fire, it takes
That
a
word
while, right?
again, discipline.
Wait, say it again.
So there's that word again, discipline. See, keeps coming
Yeah,
back.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you think about that. If you really want a fire that's going to last, you got to use more wood than paper. You can use a little paper to get it going, right? Just like so the paper is the sex appeal.
Yeah,
You can use a little bit of sex appeal.
yeah.
But if you OD on sex appeal, then you're going to vibrate. You're going to connect to the lowest vibration of that man, as opposed to the higher vibration, right? The
Mhm.
longer term perspective. It's like the difference between investing and gambling. Same
Yeah,
thing happens in the stock market. There are some people who are long-term investors who are patient and they pick the boring companies, the Coca-Colas and the Nikes that are going to grow long-term. And then there's some people who want the quick flip. They want to buy the stock options and turn $1,000 into 5,000 real fast, and those people go broke real quick. They do day
hmm,
trading and all that, right? So I think maybe Sherry, maybe part of setting your own standard and finding that standard out in the world is asking yourself from the very beginning, like what is required to be a distance runner versus being a sprinter, and how do you identify a distance runner versus a sprinter? How do you approach somebody that's in that category, right? Like if I'm trying to get you to go to bed with me tonight, I'm gonna market myself to you differently than if I'm trying to get you to be with me for the next 40 years. What are your thoughts on that?
So it's kind of funny because I'm the only one out here in the dating world, and I've been single for a year and a half after my last relationship. So, just kind of navigating these waters, and something that I think about when I meet some of these people is um what type of person do I think that they are looking for, and how do I feel like I match that idea? And that's going to sound a little weird, but it's like, so I think BJ and I were talking about this earlier, where you've got these people who make millions and millions of dollars. Most likely they're not going to pick somebody who is working at the Amazon warehouse, right? So it's just like, and we want to make sure that we are kind of matching up with somebody who's going to benefit us. So there was one that I talked to briefly um, not too long ago, and I was like, okay, he's got his PhD, this and this. He seems very disciplined, all of those kinds of things. And I was like, how do I, how do I feel like I would match in that particular realm? And I was like, well, I've got this quality and this quality and this quality and this quality. But I was like, I think I would need to work on these things over here to meet the expectations of somebody who I believe would be of this standard. But I don't think a lot of people do that these days. I think they just, because of the way society is, there isn't a lot of self reflection. There isn't a lot of growth. There isn't a lot of working on themselves. It's just this very quick and easy. Oh, anybody could get somebody who looks like Megan the Stallion, and she's making all this money, and she's this and this, and it's like, how long are you going to have somebody like that? Instead of like really investing in, you know, yourself to attract the kind of person that you ultimately want to be with. I think a lot of us just think that we're owed or just deserve, that seven-figure brother, but you are a $30,000 sister. So it's
Right.
High value man and her
Right.
low value woman. Now, well, you
yeah,
know what?
and you have no teeth, and you have no this and that. Like, you can do that if you 20 years old with like this banging body and this and this. Then sometimes you can do that because just of the way that evolutionary psychology works. But generally, they want you to bring a little more to the table than just that.
Well, I think it's a good point. I mean, it's kind of like BJ, I'm gonna say this. I think that it's like there's this huge misalignment between what people want and what they're willing to work for.
Yep.
And I think that it's if you look at America in three categories, we're first of all, let me say this. The studies show that Americans have the highest per capita income of anybody in the world, but we have the lowest quality of life.
Yeah.
And even in the income category, most Americans are financially insecure, meaning they're living paycheck to paycheck. Also, they're not prepared for retirement. And all these activities involve long-term thinking. They involve sacrifice and discipline and commitment to a longer vision and all this other stuff. So if you think about this, right, you got three major areas where you can look at Americans: health, wealth, and relationships in America, in terms of wealth, most people, there's a big retirement crisis about to happen with the boomers and Gen X because they haven't been saving for retirement. A lot of people living paycheck to paycheck. We mentioned that. When it comes to relationships, we have a very high divorce rate. A lot of people are going to be stuck when they grow old and they have no kids, no partner, nobody to be there for them because they were having fun when they were young. When you talk about mental health, American mental health is kind of like off a cliff. Like everybody's using Chat GPT for therapy now. Hopefully that'll help. And then also physical health. Americans die from a lot of stuff that could have been prevented. You know what I mean? I bet a million Negroes a year die from overdosing on fried chicken, right? Just alone, right? Right.
Right.
So it's just,
What a way to go.
what'd you say?
What a way to go, though.
Exactly. Exactly. At least you're
Some good
smiling, right?
chicken. Mhm.
Yeah, right. Colonel Sanders is waiting in heaven for them to get there. So I think that what to me the overall pattern that I see is the lack of commitment to seeing the value of delayed gratification.
Mhm.
That's it. It's all about delayed gratification. Have you fallen into a culture that says I want it all and I want it now? Or have you fallen into a culture that says, I still want some of it now, but I'm gonna put some of it to the side for late so I can have more later.
Right.
Right. And I started picking up on this in college when I started noticing how many of my friends didn't want to study. And I was like, how the hell you gonna have a good life if you ain't even going to class? And they were like, well, you study so hard, you don't have any fun. I said, no, I have fun, but I make sure I study before I go to the party.
Yeah.
Right. That's it. I just want to make sure I'm having fun for the next 40, 50 years. I don't want to have fun for 3, 4 years and then be a slave for the rest of my life because I didn't understand discipline. So the thing about life, BJ, in my opinion, I want to hear your thoughts on this, is if you don't learn to discipline yourself, the world is going to discipline you.
Oh
Life
yeah.
is going to discipline your ass. right? If you can't be disciplined enough to keep working on that business, then your boss gonna discipline you because you're gonna have to go back to the plantation to get your money, right? So I kind of feel like delayed gratification would be like a skill set that people should be taught, kids should be taught early to just know that you can't win without it. You can't succeed without it. What are your
Right.
thoughts?
Yeah, no, and I mean it reminds me of this I don't know what you call it, meme or whatever that's out there, and it was talking about your actions become your habits become your behaviors, and your behaviors become your character, right?
Mm,
And so if our actions are constantly doing these things, right, these negative consequential type outcomes, then those become our habits, and now that becomes a habit of the black, community, and then that becomes a behavior, and that essentially then becomes the character of this is what we expect of black people. Like just how what is it, the typical stereotype, black people got bad credit. Well, if that's what we continue to demonstrate through our actions, our habits, our behaviors, that's now our character. The majority of us got bad credit, and so on and so forth. We also have some other positive things. We can't jump really high typically, but but you know what I'm saying. So it's like if we're gonna continue to do those things, we're gonna have those become us, and we have to break that at some point. Somebody has to make the choice, and I keep thinking back. I'm just celebrated my 20-year high school reunion last year. Okay, and so 21 years this year now, and I remember some of the people that didn't show up, and then I remember some of the people that did show up, and I'm thinking about, well, some of those folks, I know why they didn't show up. It's because they had after we graduated, they immediately had a kid at 18 years old, out of
mm,
wedlock. And then they went and had another kid, maybe within another year or two, by somebody else, and then they're now working some crappy job that just to pay the bills, and God bless them, they're getting their kids through high school now. You seeing them post stuff on social media about them graduating and so on and so forth, which is great, but they didn't want to show up to that reunion because of their situation, and they felt shameful of that. And I
mm,
just think of those people, and there were a lot of them. I went to an inner city, black school, and so there are a lot, unfortunately, of women and men in that situation, right, either right as they were getting ready to graduate or shortly thereafter, having sex out of wedlock, right? And
mm.
and they were having sex before then, but getting pregnant then out of wedlock, and then with these people that they maybe knew for a couple of months, and there you go. And their actions became their habits. Their habits became their behaviors, and that is their character. And I see some of them even post today, I got a new kid. You mean you have three that, a couple have already graduated high school, one's in junior high, and now you got a new kid and you're almost 40 and you're still not married? What's going on? Right? So I look at it as, when are we going to have that discipline? And those let me circle back to this too. Those individuals, both male and female, didn't have their fathers in the homes. Single parent households, right? Didn't have that testosterone around. Didn't have another parent helping out while they were growing up. So they didn't see the family, didn't have the family. And then 9 times out of 10, the ladies, they were looking for dad in all the wrong places, and then wound up having to be both mom and dad, so to speak, while raising their own kid and repeating the cycle.
Wow. Well, you know what? I agree with that. I think it's at the end of the day, it's kind of like what do you want in your life? And I think maybe Sherry, I'm wondering, and I'll let you get the last word. I'm thinking at some point we got to close it up, right? But it seems to me like a lot of times self-esteem plays a part in this, right? I think that for some of us, because we're fed that constant narrative that all you are is a Negro until white people validate you, maybe they'll give you a degree or an Oscar or make you employee of the month, and then you start to say, "Look at me! All I was just a regular Negro, and now I am employee of the month, and Oscar winner, and two-time Grammy nominated." Whatever. Like they sprinkle the, you're chasing these accolades, this validation, right? And it might, or if the validation might come in the form of like spending money. Like you buy Gucci because when you wear Gucci and you drive a nice car, people think that you're more important than you were before because you never knew your own importance to begin with, right? So I personally think I have a theory on this, and I want to get your thoughts on this. I have a theory that sometimes we don't invest in our lives because we tend to invest in the things that we value, right?
Mhm.
Like if I'm a 16-year-old kid in the hood and I don't believe I'm gonna make it past 25, then I don't feel like my life has value. So why am I going to delay gratification and make investments? I'm going to just, do what corporations. This is actually what like private equity firms do when they don't value a company. They just suck, get what they can, right? They just suck all the money. That's how Red Lobster went bankrupt, and a lot of other companies. And Toys R Us, they literally just milk the damn thing. They were like, we're not invested in this company. We don't care if this company's around 100 years from now, 50 years from now. We want to get what we can right now because we don't value the things, and the things you don't value are the things you don't protect, the things you don't preserve, right? Like a young girl who doesn't value her body is going to give it to everybody. But a girl who does value her body, who's raised to know that she's special and important, she's going to say, no, you got to earn your right to get a piece of this, right? So maybe, what do you think about that in terms of like us really addressing the self-esteem issue that comes with being black that leads us to say that we're not going to invest in ourselves or our communities or each other because we don't value each other. Because think about it, we invest like crazy into white people. We will buy
Mhm.
all their damn products. We will work 40 hours a week for their companies. We will take care of their chillums like we did in slavery. We invest like crazy into white people. But the question is, who's investing in us? And why are we not investing as much in ourselves as we're investing in other people? And I think that that shows up in what BJ was just talking about, the broken families and everything else. Why would I have the discipline to create a structured family if I'm just this worthless person and I have nothing and I don't value family in the first place? What do you think?
Yes. And when I think about it too, you know, the whole self-esteem piece, it's not like the baby is born with a clean, it's not like a black baby is born with a clean slate. There's this thing called epigenetics. Trauma is passed down
Mm,
through our bloodline. So it's like, and think about the historic trauma that we have dealt with as black people, from being snatched out of slave, out of our country, into slavery, into Jim Crow, into, all of the things that we're still continuing to deal with. And the majority of our communities still thinks that mental health is bullshit. And it's
mm,
like, we pretty much all need therapy if we're going to talk about self-esteem and like really making sure that our kids understand who they are and their value, to value themselves, to then, you know, wait, etc. Because that's why I wasn't waiting in college. It didn't matter to me. I had been, sexually molested as a child. So it was just like, okay, well, this isn't, this wasn't that big of a deal. And it's just like, how many of those things happen to our kids? And then what we see in the community, along with the generational trauma that's passed down, along with the trauma that then they deal with just being black in our country. It's like 75% of our teachers are white people who don't live in our communities, who have dominant culture values, who, the preschool to prison pipeline is real. You see, um, there's a story that my old principal told me, because I was the diversity, equity, and inclusion person at school, but because I wanted to be, not because I had to be. And we had 12 black kids in the school. And they had this thing called lunch detention. So it's just like, if you got in trouble, you would have lunch detention. Well, she was walking them down to go get lunch. And I was like, hey, Deeks. And she was like, what? And I was like, were the other two black kids not at school today? Is that why you ain't got them too? Because she literally had 10 of the 12 black students with those kids, because the teachers have different cultural values. So they're dealing with that trauma. They're feeling like they are less than. They are being told they're less than in school. They're being treated like they're less than. So it's really hard to um, raise kids, and especially a single parent who's already overloaded, probably overworked, maybe has other kids, that kind of stuff. And it's just sort of like, suck it up and deal with it. But we need mental health, period. we need mental health supports like crazy. And in a lot of our schools, like I only teach in Title One schools because I do not want to teach those, anybody else. But kids who really, really need it, um, they're cutting those services. They're getting rid of some of the mental health professionals. And then our attitudes in the community around mental health doesn't help either. So it's like we
Mhm.
kind of just need, if there was a mental health spray somewhere, we could just, or some subliminal messages we could put in some in some of in some of the rap music or something that was actually positive instead of negative, that would be
Mm.
amazing. Like just get everybody listening to Public Enemy again. That would be Sister Soldier and Queen Latifah before she was an actress, that kind of stuff. But it's you
Well,
know,
I have
a lot
hope.
of
I
yeah.
have hope for the community actually, in the sense that, like, I think that over time you're gonna have these leaders that will emerge, like real leaders. Big problem with the black community is we've had a lot of fake leaders. And I think we're gonna have real leaders with real power who are gonna make a real difference in the world. And like I think about what Henry Ford did, to Americans in terms of, like, he was like the richest guy in the world, or not well, one of the richest on earth, and pretty much just said, "I'm going to use my money and my power to impose to develop culture in people's households." Like, he would go in people's houses, and it was old fashioned stuff. Like, he would pay you less money or more money if you didn't smoke cigarettes, if you cleaned your house, if you did certain things with your kids. He didn't want both parents out working or whatever. Like, I forgot what it was. I can't remember everything he did, but he used his money to create culture. Right. And I know even in Chicago, you had leaders that said, we don't want to develop any tall buildings on the beach because we want poor people to be able to come to the beach and see how, wealthier people live, so they can have something aspirational, right? Maybe it was elitism too, but it was really kind of like people taking a leadership role, right? So what I think is going to make the difference in the black community, it's not going to be every single black person in America getting on the same page. I don't think that's ever going to happen. It'll be like a few leaders with plenty of money and who maybe own media outlets and have access to real economic power that are going to basically just say, look, we're not going to try to talk you into any of this. I'm just going to hire you, and I'm going to give you expectations based on compensation. And if you do what I say, then you're going to get paid. If you don't do what I say, then you won't get paid, and that's going to be your incentive, right? Like, that's how we learn how to worship white people. Is they don't tell us what to do. They just punish us when we don't do it, right? Hey, your ass don't show up for work at 9 o'clock, you won't get paid. You don't wear the uniform, you don't follow the protocol. So I think if somebody does it like in a conscientious kind of loving way, I think that can actually be the catalyst that pushes people, because really what you're fighting against is just bad habits, and some people just don't have self-discipline. So I have hope. I just think that we got to get the bad leadership kind of out of our system, and just know there's always going to be distractions. But I think that there's so many people, like one day there's going to be some trillionaire in the black community who's going to be, maybe he's going to be built, he or she's going to have B1 principles, and they're going to say, okay, we're going to go hire 100,000 black people, and we're going to set these standards. And if you do these things, you will get paid, and that's going to make people want to live certain ways, right? I dare bring up even Trump and Musk, right? I think that they were talking about giving people money to have babies, right? Because they actually want to see, like, more people in America having kids, right? And hopefully not
Right.
more people like them, but still, it's like, because actually Africans don't have that problem. Like, Elon's talking about the whole world's population dropping and all that. That ain't a problem in Africa. Our people never listen. When Bill Gates was going over there talking about stop having kids and get abortions and all that, the African women were like, whatever. Like, family is a blessing. We're gonna have our kids. We're gonna multiply. We're gonna be fruitful. And it's interesting because if you think about this, I know I'm switching topics. I apologize, but y'all got me on the stream of consciousness. But it's crazy, right? 20 years ago, remember, they were alarmed at the fact that the world's population was growing too fast.
Right.
Y'all remember that? Bill Gates was going around the world telling people to stop having babies. He was going to Africa, and I think they were giving
He
them
was telling black people to stop having babies. They're telling white people to have more babies. there's
Right. That part too. Right. So, but even China, the Chinese government was telling Chinese people to stop having babies.
Yeah.
So they've changed the culture. They were like one child rule, don't be having kids, whatever. So people were like, okay, they stopped having kids. Now they're like, oh my God, our population's dropping. Like stop blocking God. Let the universe guide you to what you're supposed to. You're supposed to value family. Like I think that in this country, one of the biggest problems we have is that we've been taught to value corporations and the
Yeah.
government more than family. That is
Hmm.
a horrible mistake. Somebody that's not natural.
Right.
Somebody trained you to think that way. And because at the end of the day, who's really going to have your back? You really think this old government that's, $30 trillion in debt, 37 trillion, I think. I think that's the number now. Ain't never going to pay that shit back. The debt's going back. You really think this government's really going to save you? You
No.
really think corporate America is going to save you? No, a good family will show up for you in ways nobody else will. So
Hmm.
if you are a smart investor, you will invest in family. And if you ain't got family, you better start gathering people because you're
Right.
gonna need. That's
But
my
that's how we started like societies like way back anyway. Was like it was of your family and then your descendants and so on and so forth. So when you're in that tribe, like this is your family, your extended family, and you didn't trust like that other tribe or you did that for protectionism and for you to survive. And we need to get back to that, especially as Black people. We need to have that family.
Right on, right on. Well, thank you guys for I think we probably had the longest conversation I've had in a year, but I enjoyed it. It was worth it. It was a lot of fun. I appreciate y'all inviting me. And I should tell everybody that's listening, because I'm actually gonna put the recording of this on my Spotify podcast, which is called the Dr. Boyce Breakdown. But I want to tell everybody who's listening, I want to ask everybody to give me a yes in the chat if you're gonna go follow these two wonderful people, like on their platforms. So first, ladies first, Sherry Mitchell is the host of Love Logically and the History Adventure. And is that that's all I know it's on TikTok. Where else can people follow you?
So, the History Adventure is at thehistoryadventure.com as well. That's where you find all of my courses. And I actually have an African civilizations course coming up, as well as one on anti-blackness or the creation of race and the proliferation of anti-blackness. That one's for adults. And I'm also going to do the entire AP African American history course this year. And then Love Logically has its own website. That one's on TikTok. I don't have any followers on that one yet, because it's just that new. And it's on YouTube, Spotify. It will be on Apple Podcasts. So that's where you'll find Love Logically. And then the History Adventure is just my website and on TikTok for now, but it's also going to come to Facebook.
Okay. And BJ, your platform is called the Black
The
Friday
Black
Show.
Friday Show. Yeah, so you can follow me on Facebook at the Black Friday Show and also on YouTube at the Black Friday Show. So you'll see nice little black fist power up there and Black Friday Show. You can follow me, and that's where we talk about everything. We took Black Friday to give you the concept. Dr. Boyce, you'll like this one, right? So obviously on Black Friday, that's when a lot of companies go into the black when they're selling in November, right? So it's like, okay, let's talk about that economic uplift. And then I usually do the show on Friday. So we're going to talk about black economic uplift and all the things around elevating the black community on the Black Friday show.
Every day is Black Friday.
Every day is Black Friday. That's
Every
right.
Friday is Black Friday, and every day it's gonna be Friday from now on. That's every day. Today's Tuesday, but we're gonna rename
Yeah,
it Friday.
it could be Black Friday today, every day, and why.
It's gonna be Black Friday Part 3. All right. So, well, thank you very much. It was great to meet you, BJ, and
Likewise.
thank you very much, Sherry. It was awesome, and thank you everybody for hanging out with us in this amazing conversation. And don't forget, you can join us tomorrow morning also for class, Monday in the morning. Text the word morning to the number 87948. Text morning to 87948. And also, everybody, give me a yes in the chat if you're going to go follow BJ and Sherry on their platforms. I want everybody to consciously mention or commit to supporting other intelligent Black people that are out there. And just really quick, BJ's platform is called The Black Friday Show. And you can find it on Facebook. And what was the other
And
place?
YouTube.
and YouTube, Facebook and YouTube, the Black Friday show. So all you gotta do is go hit the button, y'all. And then for Sherry, it's Love Logically and the History Adventure, thehistoryadventure.com. And Love Logically, is that on YouTube, Sherry?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
YouTube, TikTok. It'll be on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Very cool. All right. Well, have a good night, everybody. And thank you all for having me in here also. And you guys have a